and welcome to Get Your Fix by Vixo. I'm Tyler Kern. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today we're going to be talking with Nate Breier. He's the VP of Client Insights at Vixo, and we're going to be discussing how you can use data analysis in your facilities management. So Nate, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, Nate, I'm excited to jump into this. And for those of us who are just joining us maybe for their first episode of Get Your Fix, we talk about the role that data analysis plays in driving business decisions for your facilities maintenance program. And obviously, it would be ideal if all of our facilities, all the different systems that go into a facility could speak to us and to tell us exactly what's going on. But data analysis kind of does that, doesn't it, Nate? So tell us a little bit about data analysis and how it can work in a facilities maintenance program.
Yeah, so when we're talking about data analysis within facilities, for me, we're trying to accomplish three things. First off is providing visibility. So ideally, we're using a dynamic tool that we can use to drill down to data at an extremely granular level. And then once we do that, we want to be extracting insights from that visibility that we get. Understanding what the drivers of repairs and spend are. And then most importantly, the final thing we do is we drive actions off of those insights that we extract. To me, the role of an analyst doesn't stop just at creating the insight or creating the report, but it's actually taking that and moving it into a meaningful action that drives an impact for the business. To give an example, we've worked with a grocery chain where we performed an analysis where the starting point was that refrigeration spend was really high. So from there, we wanted to drill down and understand, where is it high and why? And so we were able to get really granular and understand that the produce tables at the grocery chain were having issues with their drainage and drain pans that are underneath the produce tables. So the work didn't stop there. We knew that was driving the spend, but at the end of the day, we have to do an action to try to correct that. We then move into creating recommendations. We recommended that we implement a store maintenance guideline to be used by the store managers to help clear out those drain pans, as well as looking at doing a scheduled maintenance visit to look at the heating elements that helps the water in those drain pans evaporate. So we started with getting the visibility of what's happening at that store. Or at their group of stores. We created the insight, which said that it's drain pans, and we drove an action that has a positive impact.
I really appreciate the way that you walked through that, because I think I can think of numerous examples where facilities know that they need to be collecting data, they get a bunch of data, but then aren't able to then turn that into the action and then aren't able to follow through with it. And so it's really just collecting data without a plan. So I appreciate the fact that you acknowledge that it can't just be data, there also has to be action that follows up with that. And I think that's a really important aspect to highlight.
Yeah, absolutely. Once we get that visibility and we collect things in a really clear, easy way to see it, it's what we do with it after that.
So let's talk a little bit more about some challenges that companies face when it comes to data analysis. And specifically, I want to talk about what do you tell a client that wishes they could do more with data, but they have challenges consistently collecting it and then analyzing it and then following up on that. So how do you then kind of help them walk through that process?
Yeah. So collecting data in a standardized way is the most important thing. Anytime that we can move that data collection from being free form over a text field, where somebody might be writing a note on a piece of paper or typing it into a computer, and instead moving into a selection criteria, such as like a drop-down list, the ease of analysis expands significantly. As much as I can take the human element out of collecting the data that we're going to work with, we try to do that. An example of where we do that's seen big benefits is when we look at asset management, and in particular, utilizing asset tags on a piece of equipment. What that does is, instead of asking a store manager or a service provider to go out to a site and look at an asset tag and tell us what's the serial number, what make and model is it, what do we think's going wrong, now they can just select a QR code, all of that information populates, and we can use that to help start making decisions about that piece of equipment in real time.
So I think one of the things that people want to know about, right, is preventative maintenance. How can I stop something before it actually goes wrong, right? And I think that's a big challenge in data collection, right? Everyone would like to have the data that tells them, oh, something might eventually go wrong in this spot, or we're seeing a decreased output over here, and maybe that's going to suggest that things are going to fail at some point. But you have to have the data in place, and you have to be able to take actionable insights from that data in order to utilize preventative maintenance, right? So kind of talk me through, obviously that's something that everybody's going to want, but what does that look like in practice?
Yeah, so I mean, we see all of our clients talking about speed. So what's that speed to decision making that we have? And in particular, again, trying to move from reactive to proactive or predictive. So we're doing that in a lot of different ways. We have one customer who's actually been installing sensors on their equipment so that they're able to tell us that something's going wrong with that piece of equipment before a store manager might even notice it. Then once we get that notification, we want to be making a recommendation about that asset as quickly as possible. We've actually started using machine learning type techniques in order to speed up our time to decision making. One example there is we're using a K nearest neighbors algorithm, which, in layman's terms, let's say you have two bars, one of them has Sox fans and craft beer, another one has Cubs fans and wine. We probably know that Nate's going to go to the one with the White Sox fans and the craft beer. Similarly, we could take that same example and apply it to assets. So if we have a piece of equipment that a service request comes in against, and we know that asset is 20 years old, which is greater than the useful life of that machine. We know that it's had 10 plus repairs in the past year, high spend, and we haven't done anything on that piece of equipment to extend its useful life. Similarly, where we've said other machines in that same scenario, we move towards replacement, we would recommend that same type of decision for the asset that request came in on. So everything is about that speed to decision making, having the right data, and then putting it into the right types of analysis to make those decisions.
And that speed of decision making, I think, is an important thing to highlight, right? Especially as it relates to, as you mentioned, becoming proactive rather than reactive. And when you're able to be proactive and have that speed of decision making, you reduce downtime, right? And downtime means losing money. So if you're able to reduce downtime and increase uptime, then you're going to be in a more winning scenario, let's say.
Yeah, for sure. So we always are trying to increase the mix of proactive repairs or proactive replacements and decrease the mix of reactive replacements. So we know that when we replace a piece of equipment reactively because it's already broken, you're going to have more downtime, potentially more lost revenue, and the cost of that replacement is going to be significantly higher because you're rushing to get the job done, potentially expediting freight costs, getting charged overtime by the service provider. But if we can identify an asset that's about to fail, we are then able to reduce that downtime, lower the cost of the replacement, and overall have created a better experience for the customer.
Do you ever still run into people who might be skeptical of data or skeptical of what technology can actually tell them in terms of how their facility can be managed more efficiently? And if so, how do you normally go about having those conversations?
Yeah, so certainly in my day-to-day working with individuals that have been in operations for a long time, they might be skeptical of making a decision based off data, and typically what I would say is that we never use data only to make a decision. What we want to do is use data and use analysis to guide us towards where that decision needs to be made, use it to create a recommendation, but we're probably going to put a human interaction in there before we decide what that next step is. So let's say I recommended 10 HVAC units to replace at convenience stores. Once I make that recommendation, we're going to send somebody out to go get eyes on that piece of equipment and go assess if, was that recommendation a good one or a bad one? We don't always get it right, but then we react to that and plug that back into our to our equation and make sure that we make a better decision the next time.
That absolutely makes a lot of sense. So Nate, what are some of the more common questions that you get that you know that data can help answer? So what are some other big questions that data really helps with?
Definitely, given the current times, we have pretty much all of our customers are looking at how can we better control our spend. So certainly right now, the top line and revenue is more uncertain than probably it's ever been. And when that occurs, we need to control the bottom line or control the costs that are being incurred to counteract that. So we've been working with a lot of our clients on implementing what we call spend control playbooks, which are essentially different types of analysis that we know are going to, in the short term, really help us keep spend under control. The first part of the spend control playbook would be like a store outlier analysis. So quickly looking at, what sites are driving high spend, what lines of service at those sites or what trades at those sites are causing that spend. And then let's go take action. And, to me, in an ideal state, that might be a field service rep actually taking a visit to that store, meeting with a service provider. Today, we're not doing a lot of site visits, but then we'll have a phone call and we'll talk to the service provider and try to get more information from them about what's happening at that site that's causing multiple repairs and high spend. We've also implemented what we call a controlled dispatch program, which basically means that we're not going to just immediately send out a service provider for every call that comes in. So we want to collect as good of information up front as possible, so that we know which repairs we might be able to hold back on and push out to a later date, and which ones are critical to get done today. We're working on prioritization optimization. That's a mouthful right there, but essentially, what that is saying, what types of repairs do we potentially need to incur overtime on, and which ones do we not? And we want to minimize, when we're trying to control spend, we want to minimize overtime, minimize, expediting unnecessary repairs that are not necessarily business critical at that point in time. And then lastly, we're always working on optimizing service provider networks and coverage. Trying to get that best combination out of the service provider network of cost and quality. So when we take like those 4 items of the playbook and we deploy them all at once in a standardized way, you really have the ability to control costs for your clients and help them keep the reins in, particularly when they're trying to control their spend.
Definitely. Nate, you mentioned QR codes earlier and using that to bring up the information that you needed to know about, a particular part of a facility, a piece of equipment, something along those lines. Are there other advanced technologies and other maybe emerging technologies that you've seen that are helping with the data collection process that give you more precise readings, more data, things like that? Is there technology that's really helped push this forward?
Yeah, I think I started referencing the one earlier, but kind of in that realm of IoT would be the implementation of sensors within the store. So one of our large convenience customers have installed sensors within their stores, within their refrigeration units, on their HVAC unit, and they use those to be able to learn information about how the equipment is performing before a store manager might even notice something's gone wrong. So if we think about a reach-in freezer, it could be 6 or 7 hours before a store manager notices that piece of equipment isn't holding temperature. And by that time, the product within that unit is already potentially gone bad. However, with a sensor, that might trigger a 5-degree drop in the temperature of that unit. That then triggers a call. An outbound call might go to the store to say, hey, did you see this going on? Oh, no, I didn't. It looks like something's wrong. And then we take that action to get that piece of equipment up and running before we've lost product or interrupted service at that store.
Well, that's absolutely incredible. And it's amazing to see what data analysis can tell us and how it can help make facilities more efficient, save money, and decrease downtime. And so, and help everyone become more proactive regarding their facilities. And so Nate Breier, VP of Client Insights at Vixo. Nate, thank you so much for joining us here on Get Your Fix.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And everyone, thank you for joining us for this episode of the show. We'll be back soon with more content from Vixo. But until then, I've been your host today, Tyler Kern. Thanks for watching.